Okay, you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, Jen, Joe, all good? All right, cool. Hey, everyone, welcome to episode 3 of our webinar series. Today, we are going through a softball webinar today that we put together. My name is Jake Worrell. I'm here with Nolan Brunworth. I'm the Executive Director for GameChanger Athletes. Nolan is our Director of Development. Briefly, just a quick little snippet on GameChanger. We are a nonprofit leadership and organizational based organization in St. Louis, Missouri. We partner with high schools in St. Louis area and the surrounding counties, and we do workshops with their athletic departments, so with their coaches and their athletes on leadership and character development. So we're partnered with 5 schools right now, so we're a small organization looking to grow. Nolan and I put together this webinar series to help young athletes, young coaches, and parents on advice, experience on character and leadership, what to expect, college, that whole process. So today we're here with very excited with Jen Williams and Jo Koons. Jen is the head coach at Dartmouth, and Jo is an assistant coach at the University of Oregon. So very excited to have you two on. Thank you for being here. Couple things I wanted to run through before we get rolling with the questions. Kind of a funny story. So we have 89 people registered for this webinar, which was a huge bump over my goal. So thank you, Jen and Jo. You guys are obviously very popular individuals, have a lot of fan base. So thank you for sending it out to people that you know. It just smashed my goal. I had to actually upgrade my membership with GoToWebinar to allow so many people to be able to register for our event. So awesome there. This webinar will be recorded. We will have it available probably tomorrow. It'll be on our social media links. Be a great way to for parents, coaches, athletes that are watching to sit down and watch it with your team. It's gonna be a lot of great advice, experience that's gonna be said from Jen and Jo. It'd be a great time to have a team bonding activity to be able to watch this, take some things from it. So that'll be available tomorrow. Lastly, we would love to hear from you guys. So the people listening, we have about 13 to 14 questions that we'll run through, have some great content, some great conversation, try to get it all done within the hour. And if we get through all the questions, we got some leftover time, and you guys, people listening, have posted any questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them. If we can't, I'll send the questions to Jen and Jo throughout the holiday. Whenever they can get back to me with some answers, I'll be able to forward those on to you guys. So with that being said, Jen and Jo, thank you for being here. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Doing good.
Good. Well, good. Let's go ahead and get started. So obviously today we're kind of here to talk about, have some good conversation on questions geared toward leadership, character development, what to expect being a college softball athlete or just even a student athlete at the collegiate level, and areas around those questions. So first question is here. Was there a coach for each of you ladies that impacted your life at a young age? And was there something you learned or took from that coach about leadership and the way you act as a person? Jen, we'll go ahead and start with you on that one.
Sure. I think that this is a great question because whether it's a coach or it's another mentor in your life, hopefully everybody has a chance to have somebody like this in their life. Seeking them out sometimes is important too, like trying to identify who that person is and making a point to get more out of them if you can. And it might not always be a coach. It might be a teacher. It might be a family friend. It might be somebody you're related to. There's a lot of options for that. I, one of my primary coaching influences, and he actually was a coach of mine. He was my high school coach, and he was a great mentor to me. And he really gave me my start in coaching when I asked him, after my first college season, I asked him if he'd let me come back and kind of hang around the dugout a little bit during the end of their, because they were in the whole second half of their high school season still, when I was done with college. And he said, why don't you just come and coach first base? Like, come and like actually coach with us. And I was a college freshman. I knew nothing about anything. And I knew how he worked because I played for him for 4 years. But that was about it. And he gave me a shot, and he gave me a chance to go out and make mistakes and to experience what it's like out there in the field, which, is addicting. And it was really something that solidified for me that this was something I wanted to do with the rest of my life in one form or another. So that was a huge influence for me. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jen. Jo, what do you got?
Yeah, I think for me, one of my influences as well was my travel ball coach, and he actually started coaching me when I was around 11 or 12. And I think the biggest thing I took away from him and his coaching was his generosity. And I think, when we hear the word generosity, we think of financially, right? Like he was very financially invested, which he was. And I think it was one of the best things for me and for our team was to see not just how he was invested in the program because he didn't have any kids involved at the time, but really invested in like the time and the effort that he put into us. And I think because of that, it was one of those leadership qualities that I took away with. And I'm like, right, I want to be a generous leader, not just with my finances, but also with my time and my effort. And I just think that that was like one of the biggest things I took away and into my college career and then into my coaching career as well, is just be somebody who is generous. And I'm incredibly thankful that I had someone to demonstrate that at such a young age to me.
That's cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Great stuff. Next question. So at GameChanger Athletes, we talk a lot about the 10 strengths of an ideal, student athlete. Is there a particular strength that resonates with you, especially given your current roster?
I read the strengths and I was like, these are all really good. So it's hard to pick like one or two. But I think one of the biggest ones in a current roster, no matter what level you're at, is the ability to harness failure. And that failure is an event and it does not define who you are. And I think that's the hardest thing to learn as an athlete, because you're told like if you don't achieve, like that's not good enough. And so it's being able to harness it in yourself and be like, okay, it's okay that I failed and it doesn't define who I am, and I can get back up and try again instead of internalizing it and dwelling on it. So I think that's one of the biggest things that like I talk to my athletes about is like, can you compartmentalize it and then learn from it and move on and realize that it's not who defines you as an athlete or as a person. And then I'm going to sneak another one in there. I think building relationships is huge on the Strength Finder. And then like you have to be able to have a relationship with your teammates, with your coaches, with your professors or your teachers, whoever it may be. And I'm sure I'm going to talk more about it later, so I won't say too much into it, but that's a huge one for me, not just as an athlete, but just as a person.
That's cool.
That was going to be my second one I stuck in there too. I absolutely agree. These are all tremendous. There's so much out of every single element of this, all 10 of them, that speak to so many parts about being a student athlete. The number one for me is know yourself. And that's something that is true for coaches and also true for athletes. And it's something that we're working a lot on with our roster right now, and that I'm working on with myself and my staff. You have to know who you are. You have to know your weaknesses. You have to know your strengths. You have to know the limits of those strengths. And you have to be able to teach your athletes to do the same. Sometimes there are things that they've considered weaknesses of theirs, not actually a weakness. It's just a strength that got out of control. How do we teach them to understand that and to build on that? And so that's something that I've been fortunate enough to work with some leadership training with myself and with my staff that's helped me grow this hugely. And I'm really able to now carry this forward to my team. Knowing yourself is key for being able to have accountability, being able to just understand your values and how to act upon them on a day-to-day basis. So my second one was going to be build relationships, but coach spoke really well to that. So I'm going to do a different one instead. And this actually goes back to that high school coach. And I didn't mention this when I answered the first question. I kind of lost the thread a little bit, but harness fun, that's something that he really taught me. And it wasn't just fun. It was also harnessing the balance as a coach between guiding tradition, but also letting your athletes have traditions too, and the fun in both of those things. So you have ownership over the program as a coach, but give your athletes space to like take things in their own directions as well. And he really demonstrated that in so many things that we did. I grew up in Maine, so there wasn't really a whole lot of hot days in Maine when we were in but every once in a while we would have a really hot day where it was like over 60 and everybody was like, this is amazing. And we would have, what do we used to call it? It used to be like popsicle day or a popsicle strike. Sorry, it was popsicle strike.
Yeah.
And so it was this thing that the team would all agree, and we wouldn't tell the coach. We would all agree, and right in the middle of practice, we would all just sit down and start screaming that we wanted popsicles. And we wouldn't go anywhere until he drove to the grocery store, which thankfully was across the street from our field, and brought us back popsicles. And then while he went and got it, we would keep practicing, and then we'd have popsicles at the end of practice. And so this is something that happened every year, and we only got to do it one time, so we had to like pick the day. But it was, and that was something that like he, I think, initialized, but he let the team kind of run with what it looked like. And by the time I got there, it was a well-established tradition that continues to this day. So things like that, where you harness the fun and you find things that matter to you as a coach that you think are fun, but you also give your athletes space to breathe and to develop these things on their own, even if maybe they're a little different from what your original vision was.
That's cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Great insights.
Yes, it was. Cool. So next question that we have here. So outside of like development and training on the field, what is one thing you would encourage an athlete or a coach to invest their time in? And Jen, we'll start with you on that one.
I mean, I guess I'm gonna come back to this again. I did just answer it in the last question, but you
That's
need
cool.
to make sure that you are investing time in your personal development as a coach and as an athlete. You need to, and you actually speak to this later in some of your questions and in these 10 strengths, you have to know your own values and understand, like, why are you here? As a player, this is really important. And it's something that, especially in the club ball world now and in high schools too, it's just a grind. You're just going and going and going. And of course, you're excited to play, which is great. But do you ever stop and think, like, why am I doing this? Is it really what I want? What do I want? The college search process, the playing process, it all becomes so much more meaningful if you have an understanding of why you're continuing to do it. And it can get really easy to not stop and think about that, especially when you start hitting the recruiting process and things get nuts. So you have to know yourself as an athlete, and that really means it's okay to say, do I still want to do this, and what means most to me about it? What do I want? Where do I really want to invest my time as an athlete? And then as a coach, again, knowing yourself, if you have to be able to model the way for your athletes. And if you can't model, making mistakes and recovering from them, putting ego aside to focus on what really is important, what are your values as a coach and why do you coach? And are you in it for the reasons that make the most sense? If you're in coaching for your own ego, then maybe it's time for a career change. Coaching is a tough profession to be about your own ego in. If you're, if you're in it for reasons that are more about the athlete or about understanding your own self and values better, then it's a profession that can get you places incredibly quickly and incredibly painful sometimes. So, that's something, knowing yourself and investing in that self-knowledge. I'm going to talk about that, again, probably on this call because it's a huge thing for me.
Cool.
But that is definitely one that I would say.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, that's really good, Jen. I would say, I'm just going to follow up and add, I think one of the biggest things that to invest yourself in, again, is that relationship piece. And not just with the people and your peers and around you, but as an athlete, investing time into finding those mentors or those people who are going to be there for you through thick and through the thin, right? Because we all know that like life goes far beyond the two pairs of white lines that we play between, and you need to have those people in your corner supporting you as you become who you are meant to be beyond just an athlete. And I think from that too, that mentorship that you receive, you get to give away. And I think that's the beauty of being in athletics, is like you kind of have that built-in system almost with coaches and or even in teachers and whoever else is in your circle, and just being willing to seek it out. I think at times it can be scary or like intimidating. You're like, I don't really know what to do or what to ask them. But you pursuing it means so much to the people who are being pursued. I think, I think back to like kindergarten, right? Like we all wanted friends in kindergarten, and you just go up and be like, hey, you want to play? And the older we get, it seems like the harder it is for us to do that. So being able to just put yourself out there and be willing to challenge yourself and have those conversations and understand it's not going to happen overnight. Like it's going to take time, but it's just like everything else within athletics or school or whatever it may be. Like it is a process, but the reward is going to be great in the end. And I know for myself, I wouldn't be who I am without the relationships that I've built, because those people have been there with me since I was, little tiny Joe, right? And now I'm, coaching at college, right? But they've been there through every step of the way, and I wouldn't be who I am without their mentorship in my life. And I just, one more thing I just add is like, as student athletes, I think too, like just to Jen, like we focus so on the tunnel vision of like whatever, reaching the high school, reaching the championship or whatever, reaching college, and then what are we gonna do after college? And it's like explore your interests too. Like don't just focus on only softball or only your sport. Like find out what else you're passionate about, because I think sometimes we come into college or out of college and we're like, so what am I gonna do now? So find some other things that you find joy in and that you're passionate to use your giftings in.
That's cool. Great stuff. Thank you.
Excellent. So you've been coaching for a while. Are there specific examples of how you personally try to develop leadership when you deal with a set of individuals? Just, if there's anything specific that you'd like to share, everybody has a different philosophy of how that's done, whether they're more of a talker or a lead by example, or maybe there's just certain exercises that they like to take their team through. But if you could speak to a few examples of how you try to train and develop leadership so that they mature on and off the field.
Yeah, I think at every level it's looked a little different. I've tried a few different things at different places and been under some, of my head coaches who have tried different things. One of the things that I really like just personally, and it's not set in stone and there's always variances, but I love to do some type of like strength test or personality test of some sort. And not that you have to live and die by the book. I think that sometimes, we read those tests and you're like, well, this is their box and they only fit inside that box. And so, but it does give you like a general idea of maybe how they think and just ways to get to know them. Because at the end of the day, as a coach, our job is we have all these puzzle pieces, and it's like, how do we fit them together? And of course, for the chemistry of our team, but then on top of that, like, how do we get them to mold and like shape their puzzle piece to be as full as it can be and not just leave them stuck where we got them. I know for us, one of the biggest things that we do right now, we call them duck IDs. And essentially, we just sit down with our team once a week and we take 30 minutes of our practice time and just pick a topic, and usually it's a pulse on what the team is needing in that week or whatever it may be. It could be perseverance or work ethic or teamwork, whatever it may be. And we kind of like find a video or have our athletes find a video and kind of sit down, watch the video, have them talk about it, and then kind of come up where we come up with from that. And just like that skill or character quality we're going to focus on for that week. And I think that's one of the biggest things for our team. And then individually, you can take stuff away from that as an athlete and help them build. And then as a coach, have conversations with them about that throughout the week. And I think that's the biggest thing about leadership within your team. It's like, you have to continue to have those follow-up conversations. Like, it is a relationship and it takes work and effort, and it's good work. It's great work. It's my favorite part of my job, right? Because you get to help, build these people and help them become who they're meant to be. But it does take effort. It can't just happen overnight.
Yeah, 100%. I think that really, like, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'll talk about we do with our team, but that last thing that Jo just said, that's it. It takes work, and it's fun work sometimes. Sometimes it's not fun work, and you just have to keep staying the course with it. And it's something that we talk to the team about every year, because building culture takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of commitment. And so then we come back in the fall, and every fall they're always like, it just doesn't feel the same. Like, we're just not as close as we were last year, because their memory of last year is also just like rosy because it was last year. But then they're thinking about the end of the year when they'd spent a lot of time committing to each other and learning each other and caring about each other. That is such a key thing. And And you have to really teach them, this takes constant work. It's not like you reach a threshold where you've got it and then you're set. It's a constant work in progress, and that can be super fun, but it definitely sometimes does feel a little bit like work, like any relationship, and that's just how it goes. So I definitely agree with that, Joe. That was awesome. For us, we do a few different things. We do a combination of one-on-one work with individuals, weekly meetings with a team, and then day-to-day stuff during practices as well. So we have one-on-one meetings that are voluntary. So I have one-on-ones with them that are not voluntary, but for personal leadership development, they're able to reach out to me, and I basically take them through a curriculum of personal leadership growth. And that's a one-on-one weekly conversation for an hour. And that just happens. I don't bug them. They come to me when they want to do it, and I don't chase them down. If they want to stop, we just stop. And that's something that I'm doing that with about 6 people on the team right now. And those are people who are either the most bought in on the team already, or they're the people who they understand that they're not bought in and they're confused as to where we're not connecting. So they're trying to talk to me to figure it out, which is great. I'd rather they do that than just kind of ignore me and go their own way. We do weekly team meetings as well. So we actually take a full practice and have it just a team meeting. I found, especially when you're dealing with these really smart kids, like I coached at MIT before this and at Dartmouth, like they're up in their heads all the time, and they are everywhere. Jo will say this too. She has athletes who I know are in their heads all the time. And it's just all of them. And so we have to figure out, how do we help them manage their own process, their own thought process? How do we help them understand their thinking and then figure out what to do about it on the field as well as off? So the meetings are really a worthwhile time. And then just a little exercise for you that we do every day that addresses some of this is we do, at the beginning of every practice, we do something called positives. And positives are an exercise where the whole team, it's pre-practice, so they've warmed up and stretched, but we haven't started softball work yet. They get in a circle. It's a focus activity as well as a training activity. And they have to go around and make a declarative positive statement about something they're going to do that day. It can't be, well, I want to do this, or, I'm not going to strike out today, because that's a negative sentence. It's not a positive one. We're talking about concrete positive language and what positive self-talk sounds like. We're talking about focusing on what you're going to be doing, because often, especially coming from classes, they'll come in and they'll be like, I just want to enjoy the sun with my teammates today. And it's like, nope, that's not really a great way to go into practice. Let's actually do something. What are you going to do? And what are you going to actively achieve? What's a measurable thing that you can hold yourself accountable to, and your teammates can too? And so it really gets them focused and practice focusing, because that takes practice. And then they work on the consistency with that, regardless of how they're feeling that day. They have to do it every single day. It gets them hopefully set and ready to go. The first couple weeks that we do this, I stand there and kind of hover over them, and I question them through it. I just want to sit here and enjoy the sun. Okay, why do you need to enjoy the sun? Well, because I'm really stressed out. Okay, so you're really stressed out. So what do you really want to do right now? I want to push away my stresses and just focus on practice. Okay, great. So you want to focus. How are you going to do that? And I kind of like take them through this till they get to what's a concrete thing that they're going to do. I'm going to be present with my teammates and make eye contact with at least half of my team once throughout practice, or I'm going to make eye contact with every single person during practice today. Like that doesn't have to be a mechanical thing, but it's a focus thing that's measurable, that's doable. So we do that every day as well.
Dang.
Excellent. Great insight.
That's awesome. I'm typing here, taking notes, and my fingers haven't moved this fast. And
I started that one back at MIT ago, and like MIT kids, they were coming from labs too, and like, God, I love those kids, but man, their heads were just like, whoop, like they were just, I don't even know where their heads were half the time. So this was born out of like desperation a little bit, and it really helped. It really helped.
That's cool. That's great stuff. Thank you, Joe and Jen. That was cool. So I know we're going to touch a little bit on recruiting, not really exactly what it looks like, but I know with your guys' guidelines, feel free to answer it how you can without getting yourselves in trouble, obviously. So, when you're out recruiting or in the recruiting world, you're traveling around looking for players to add to your roster. Outside of looking for like a certain position, are there any qualities of a person or a young lady that you look for when you're out traveling around that fits in your program? And Jen, we'll start with you on that one.
Okay. Yeah, this is an interesting question. When you're out recruiting, first of all, just to preface any recruiting conversation, I'm pretty limited on what I can say about specifics about Dartmouth, but this is more of a character, like general question.
Yeah.
So, when I'm out there and I'm recruiting, I'm looking at effort, and I'm looking at attitude, and I'm looking going back to what Jo was saying, I'm looking at your relationships with the people around you, which especially in club ball can be hard. And I know that, but are you putting in effort? Are you a good ball player? Those are things that are kind of just a given. Like, you need to be working as hard as you can, and you need to be showing that. You need to be showing me that you're an effective ball player out in the field. Those are kind of a givens. The next level stuff is, do you have relationships with your teammates? Do you have relationships with your coaches? Do I see you trying to learn out there as well as perform? Do I see you being negative? Is there a character or class issue here that's a problem? So it's a lot of those more intangible things, but there's indicators of them always in how you play. So I guess to rephrase this in a more concise way, you have things that are a given. You have to show skill. You have to show effort. Those are baseline. And then beyond that, you have to show me that you know how to build relationships, that you really deeply care about what you're doing and the people around you, even if you don't know them that well. You're interested in trying to perform and be with them. And that you are, not going to be a negative person out there. You're going to be somebody who's looking for solutions and ways forward rather than wallowing in defeats or in failures. So that's, I think I could go on for a while more about this, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. So.
Thanks, Jen. All right, Jo.
No, yeah, she said most of what I was gonna say.
Cool.
I think the biggest thing that I look for when I'm out recruiting is that pure joy of playing the game, and having a presence. And I mean, that sounds maybe silly to say, but like, we can recognize it. Like, are you playing because you love the game and you love to compete and you love your teammates and you love everything the game's teaching you, for the relationships you're developing? Like, we can see it. Like, I can see, again, like, we pick up on how you treat your teammates, how you look, how you talk to your coaches, how you talk to your parents. Like, I mean, we see a lot more than you think we see. And I think the biggest thing that we get caught into, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but it's like, are you playing just to earn a scholarship? Because that's not a good enough reason to be playing. And I think we get caught up in that so easily in the travel ball world. Like, even some of these young kids, I was giving lessons this summer to, some 10, 11-year-olds, and my parents were like, well, do you think she's going to be good enough to go to college? I'm like, I don't know. First of all, I don't have the answer, but second of all, like, you need to make sure your kid loves the game by the time it's time for her to go to college, because if you don't, you're going to be miserable when you get to college. And again, we're going to touch on that a little bit later, but yeah, enjoy playing. That's one of the biggest things. Like, if you don't love the game, like, that's fine. There's plenty of other passions that you can pursue, but it's got to be more than just to play. Like, there's got to be some passion behind it.
Yeah.
And also to follow up on that last point, like, we can also tell if you're faking that. Like, we can tell if you've listened to seminars like this and you're trying to check off the boxes and like do all the right things, but then really you don't, like, you're not really focused on being there and playing softball. You're focused on checking the list off, right? And so, and if you find yourself caught in that trap, then you have to, again, come back to, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to play college softball. Well, why do you want to play college softball? If, as Jo was saying, it's because you need a scholarship, you need to start reevaluating, because there's a lot of other ways to get scholarships. If you are doing it because you love the game, or you love building relationships, or you love XYZ, whatever it is about specifically softball and playing softball at a high level, then focus on that instead. Focus on those things that you love. And that will get you to the things that Coach and I are talking about, rather than saying, like, I have to make sure that I'm smiling all the time, that I always carry my own bag, and that I always treat my parents nicely, and like whatever. Just focus on the reasons why you love the game and who you want to be, and those things will come. And that's where the focus needs to be.
That's awesome. Thank you. Great stuff.
Yeah, excellent. And a bit of a segue. Any advice that you would give to parents who are trying their best in many ways to help their student athlete explore opportunities at the next level?
Is this one me first? I think it is.
Yeah, we could probably spend some time on this one, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to say. First thing I'll just say, it's a journey and everybody's journey looks differently. And I think, when we enter into recruiting, I even know like from my personal experience, you watch like The Blind Side, right? And you're like, right, I'm just gonna have voicemails lined up on my on my phone and like all these people want me, right? And I'm gonna
All
get to do this.
Division ones.
Yes. And I think that's what a lot of people's reality is. Like it's gonna be September 1, and all these schools are gonna be after me, and it's gonna be an easy decision, and they're all gonna offer me a full ride, and it's gonna be great, right? And that's really not the reality of it. And there is no step-by-step guideline because everybody's story is different. I mean, you could ask every single one of the girls on my team right now, and every different team and every level I've coached at, and everybody's story looks completely different. So don't get discouraged is probably my biggest advice to parents and to athletes. Like it's your story, own it. I know for me, I came from a super small town, and I was the big fish in a little pond where I was at, and I was not recruited heavily. Nobody knew who the Chico Stars were. Even when you're playing in those big tournaments down in Huntington Beach or, in Florida or wherever you're going, nobody's coming to watch you play. And that's okay. It's my story. And I wasn't even recruited until after I had graduated my senior year, and nobody was after me. Like my plan was to go to a JUCO and then transfer. And, after I played my 2 years, and then all of a sudden Utah State found me out of the blue, and I signed my letter of intent in July, and I showed up on campus in August, right? And I could have never imagined that story for myself, but I use it as an example to say, like, it's never too late. And I know coaches say that all the time, like, there's a fit for everyone to play. And, when you're the athlete or you're the parent, you're like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Like, can somebody just like my kid? Or it's, you have the money issue, right? And everybody's chasing that scholarship. And I'm like, as a coach now, I'm like, I would love to give every kid money, right? Everybody wants money, but the money I can give you does not determine your worth and how you're going to do as a player or where you're going to go afterwards, right? Because if you're choosing to school based on money, like that's probably not the best reason to be choosing to school. Just like, maybe the first one after you isn't the reason you're choosing it. Like do your research, do your homework. And again, I think that goes back to exploring those passions outside of softball too. Like what are you going to invest your academic career in, and what campus fits you best? Are you a homebody? I mean, there's so many different questions that we could sit here and answer, but for the parents and for the athletes, just realizing that the day you plant the seed is not the day you're going to harvest the fruit, right? And everybody's story looks different, and your fruit may come at a different time than my fruit comes. And I think as athletes, looking at other athletes in your stories, like don't get caught in the comparison. Just because Sally's getting this full ride to Alabama and I'm working just as hard as Sally doesn't mean I'm going to get a full ride to, Florida. Like that's just not how it works. And maybe I do, but it's in different timing. There is no set in stone, and it's okay. It's okay. Just own your story and where you want to go and find your best fit.
Yeah, I would just expand on that fit piece a little bit in terms of I come from a Division III background. I played D3 and coached in D3 for a long time. And I saw so much recruiting that athletes and parents, and then also club ball coaches or high school coaches too, would just completely close off huge swaths of schools, tremendous amounts of opportunity because they're so focused on Division I. And I coach at Division I, don't get me wrong. Like there's definite things about Division I that are great, but there's also things about D2 and D3 that are amazing, or NAIA or JUCOs. There's so many different ways. And this really comes back to what Jo was saying. Like it's about what fits you best. It's about your story, but make sure that the people around you, the coaches you're working with, your parents, your guidance counselors, whatever, make sure that people you're talking to understand the breadth of possibilities open to you, and that you understand that there's a lot of ways to get the experience you want at a higher level of play. There are Division III schools that are better than the majority of Division I programs out there. And I know that because I played against most of them. So like there is so much opportunity out there at different divisions and different levels. And that's also true within Division I as well. You know, within Division I, you have so many people who want to go look to these giant Power 5 schools. There's so many other schools in Division I that have tremendous opportunity and have some money and have other things to offer too. So it really does come back to that fit. But and I guess my main point with it is make sure the people around you understand the opportunities that are available so that you're not closing yourself off to opportunities that might actually suit you better than what you originally had in mind. You need people who are going to be open to all possibilities. Talk to coaches from all levels. If you have a coach from a D3 who reaches out about you, do you have a coach who's really going to make an effort to respond to that D3 coach the way they are to D1s, or do they want to be able to put in their website that they sent you to a Power 5, regardless of whether or not it's actually the best fit for you? There are so many club ball coaches out there who do not have, they think they have good intentions, but they really don't. You know, and you have to be really careful with that. And that's something that that I have seen so much. So make sure that the people you're surrounding yourself with truly want you to find the best fit, and have a discussion with them about what that actually means, so that they are helping you find those opportunities.
That's cool. Awesome. Again, I cannot take as many notes as possible here. Thank you, guys. So cool. This is actually one of my favorite questions here. Basically just paint us a picture of what it looks like to be a student athlete at the college level, softball student athlete, and what you can expect between school, between practice, just softball life, working out, and the commitment it is for the next 4 to 5 years you're there. And Jen, we'll start with you on that one.
This one actually comes back to what we were just talking about, where it comes back to fit a little bit. There's some commonalities, and I'll talk about those in a second. But depending on whether you're looking at D3, D2, D1, and depending on what level of D1 you're looking at, like my athletes in the Ivy League have a pretty different experience from Joe's athletes in Power 5. Like it's just a different kind of experience. We have restrictions placed on us because of academic commitments and things like that. They still, you know, our Division I athletes were competing at a very high level, but their day-to-day experience is going to look a little bit different because of the emphasis on academics. And that's similar where my athletes compared to D2 or D3 athletes potentially are going to look a little different as well. Just the amount of time they spend in the field, the amount of time they spend practicing and competing and traveling, et cetera. Yeah. So I think that a lot of it, you know, that's where, again, you know, what you want out of the game can determine what division you're looking at. If you want to be traveling multiple, you know, all through the spring and playing, you know, tons and tons of games, then there's a certain level of Division I you need to be targeting. If, you know, you're fine with playing between 40 and 60 games and, you know, or between 30 and 50 games or whatever, and, you know, looking at a little bit of a more relaxed schedule, but you have more time to, you know, to be an engineer or to look into nursing or to, you know, do some sort of internship or join another club on campus, then there's other divisions that are going to provide you with a great softball experience and also allow you to do some of that as well. So some of that is dictated by where you're looking. Okay. But in terms of commonalities, I mean, the main thing that I would say is that it's complete insanity. It's chaos. Like these kids they're just like, what is happening? What is my life? You know, the main thing that you want to make sure that you can rely on is that will your team and your coaches have your back and helping you figure some of this stuff out as you go in. You need to make sure you're asking them questions to try to dig into, will you understand like how overwhelming this is, and do you have a plan for helping me deal with it? Because it will be overwhelming and you probably will need some help to deal with it. And balance between academics and athletics is really tough. As an Ivy League coach, especially, that's something we deal with all the time. So I talk about that regularly when I'm talking to recruits, because it's something that it's just a fact of life for every single kid that plays for me. They're going to have challenges. At other schools, that's going to be just as true, whether they're a high academic school or not. There's going to be struggles between academics and athletics that you need to make sure you ask coaches about, because you're trying to get your degree. So that's going to be true regardless. So this is a super chaotic answer to this question. So I guess the transition, I would say, the transition is, the main thing that I would say is the transition is something that it's going to be dictated by where you are and by the people that you have around you. So you want to make sure that you feel like you are supported and that you feel like you can be comfortable being who you are. And that doesn't mean you're going to feel that way right away. It's tough in college, but you need to at least get to know a place as well as possible, or a coach as well as possible in the recruiting process, that you feel like you can be yourself as you're going through all these transitions. Because if you're going through all these transitions and you're trying to be somebody that you're not on the field or off field, then you're in real trouble. So try to make sure that you really feel comfortable being who you are on your recruiting visit, talking to the coach. You know, try to be yourself so that you can really figure out whether that's going to work in that program or not.
Cool.
Joe, I hope you have a more coherent answer. Mine was all over the place. So go for it. What do you got?
I love that. I love it.
I'm gonna piggyback on what you said. You're kind of touching on what I had thought about. Yeah, I think when you come in, right, we have these expectations of what it's going to look like, right? And, you know, you've seen the best of the program on your visits and from, you know, what we've presented to you as coaches. And so you get there and you have and you think you're going to know what it's like. And I think there's going to be a huge period of growth from when you walk in your freshman year, when you leave your senior year. But part of that, I think, is the hardest of your freshman year, is that the faster you can become uncomfortable and get over yourself almost, the better you're going to be. Because I think we come in and like Jen says, it's like you want to be yourself, but you're also around in a new environment, around new people, and it's like hard to be yourself. But it's like once you can get over it and just be yourself, you're gonna be ready to grow, and that's when you enter into that growth period. So the faster you can make that transition, I think that's the ticket to get to where you want to go. And I would just piggyback and say that college is going to be one of the hardest things. Being a student athlete is going to be one of the hardest things, and it's going to challenge you, and it's going to be great all at the same time. But it's also going to be like, it's going to be the best time of your life. But it's remembering, again, I think that goes back to, you know, your love of the game. Are you willing to, you know, sacrifice some things to and be able to overcome some of the hardships you're going to face to get the most out of your experience, because it truly is a commitment. You can't go into this commitment half-heartedly and you're not going to get the experience you want out of it. Just like anything in life, like you got to jump full in with your whole feet and just go for it, because it's going to be the best, like I said, but it's going to be hard, and just being committed to that.
That's cool. I want to add a quick little question before Nolan, we jump to the next one. Both of you guys had different, obviously, college experiences. Paint me a picture of your day. Take me back when you were in college, and let me hear some of the chaos of what your day looked like. We'll start with Joe.
You know, it's funny because I guess I didn't really see it as chaos, because I loved it. I knew that was what I was getting myself into. And I honestly think, you know, I think there's another question later just about like time management. And honestly, I think being an athlete, it's almost like easier than it seems, because everything's like kind of laid out for you. I mean, yes, there's a few decisions you have to make as to, you know, am I going to study or am I going to take a nap now? But for the most part, like I didn't feel like it was that chaotic. It was like you get up, we lifted at 5:30 at Utah State, so we got up early, and then we ran after, and then class, and then usually either study hall before or practice, and then study hall afterwards, and then, you know, you eat dinner and you go to bed. So I guess I didn't feel like it was that chaotic. Now, sometimes when you travel and the stories of, you know, missed flights and stuff like that, that's kind of chaotic, but it's also like memorable too. So again, I think when you're committed to it, I don't see it as chaos. I mean, yes, I think coaches deal with more chaos than the athletes themselves, and in a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, it was definitely a different schedule, different kind of experience being at the D3 level and being at, I was at Middlebury College, which is a pretty highly academic D3 as well. So we actually didn't even have a fall season. We had to on our own. So it really depended on what time of year we were in. If we were in the fall, we'd get up and we'd have class, and I was pre-med. So I was like, which like is doing a lot of good now, right? Like, so glad I spent all that time. But whatever. It actually did do me some good, helping get my master's degree and stuff like that. So it's but
there you go.
So I was pre-med, and so I'd wake up and I'd do morning labs because I wanted to get all the labs done in the morning. So I'd have early morning labs, and, you know, I'd be in the science building all day, whatever. And then I'd go and either work out or have team practice, or when we were in season, we'd have actual practice. I'd pitch on my own in addition, because sometimes we had pitching during practice, sometimes it was outside. And if we weren't outside of practice, and if we weren't in season, I was pitching every day. So I would set that up, work out in the afternoon, and then, you know, go to dinner with the team, and then you just would study on your own. And then sometimes I ended up getting into a couple extracurriculars. Like I was the musical director of an a cappella group for a couple years, and like a couple other random things, which I didn't really have time for, to be honest, but like you just kind of like made time. And it was a part of my experience. It's part of why I chose E3. I wanted to be able to have a great softball experience, but then also be able to be a science major and then had time for a couple other things too. And it ended up being, it was a little chaotic at times, but it was a balance that worked for me. And so we didn't have team study halls or anything. It was much more self-managed academically, and your time was much less structured. And so you had to really kind of figure out how to get your work done academically, and also how to get the softball work done on your own too. So the experiences can definitely look different depending on where you're looking.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, great insights for our audience. So we've touched upon a lot of different great leadership qualities and traits for coaches. What do you think more than anything defines a great coach?
Oh, tough
This
question.
one first.
I really think that a great coach is somebody who wants to build the person, not just the player. And I think, something as great coaches do is that they realize that leaving a legacy is a daily investment. And the best leaders are learners and they're listeners. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And I think you have to have a love for what you do too, because love has the power to influence your relationships. It influences what you do and who you are, and it builds and it changes and it transforms just not only who you are, but who your program is, and where you want to go with that. And I think great coaches they're invested in, again, that daily investment every day to mentor and to love their teams, and such an influential time in their lives. I mean, whatever time in their lives that you're coaching, it's still really influential. And I think one of my favorite quotes is that coaches have the ability to impact a person more in a year than people do in a lifetime. And I think it's just like being able to take that really seriously. And great coaches, they're selfless, and they're willing to give up things that they would want to do to give, again, because they're committed to building the whole person, and as well as like developing your staff as a coach. I think that's it could be easy to neglect that because we're so focused on the student athletes, and it's like, who are you building relationships with you and the people around you? Because that's also an important quality of a great coach, is that you're also being mentored and poured into, and you can't give without being able to receive too. And we can all learn from each other, and that's one of the things I feel like we're pretty good with in the softball world, compared to a lot of sports. It's like we love to share and build those relationships with one another, because you can always learn and you can always grow as a coach. And those are my like three things, I guess, of defining a great coach. It's hard because there's a lot to put into words.
There's a lot.
You killed it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jo.
Part of why this is so tricky is that you can see just by watching your television, by talking to any cross section of college coaches or high school coaches or club ball coaches. There's so many different ways to be a great coach. So when you're asking about what are the characteristics that define a great coach, it's really tough because people draw from all sorts of different things and they find ways to make it work. I think that a commonality among those is, again, it comes back to something I've said a couple times. A lot of the coaches who are most successful, they know who they are, and they know how they're going to be successful and how to find athletes that will work with that, or how to train athletes to work with that. If you know who you are as a coach and what your path looks like, then it is much easier and less bumpy to get people to come along with you. If you don't know who you are and you're not really sure what you're about or what that path looks like, then screw ups you make, mistakes, diversions, things that throw you off course, they're really going to have a much higher impact. If you really know who you are and what you're about and where you're going, then difficulties, things happening to your team, to yourself, it doesn't throw you off course as much, and you can continue towards that greatness. You can continue to try to self-improve and figure out how to get the team where you want them to go. So the self-awareness piece is key, knowing who you are. And I think you all the things that Jo said are absolutely true. Those are some really trademark things, because there's a lot of commonalities. There's things where a lot of the people who have this awareness have those traits. I think that you really have to start with that self-awareness to then also understand there's coaches that you can look at and be like, they're nothing like me, or they're nothing like what Jo just said, but they're great coaches and they have a lot of success. Part of it depends on how do you find success. Maybe they won a lot, but did they form relationships with their players, and do they have relationships with their players still after they've graduated? And there's a lot of ways to define that, but there's a lot of ways to be a really, really successful coach. And I think the most common thing is who you are so that you can stick to that regardless of what's thrown at you. And it really helps inspire people to keep following you.
It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So you both have played at a variety of different levels, from high school obviously to college. What do you think it means to be a great teammate? And Jen, we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some common things with what you hear. Well, I'm going to come back to some things that Jo just said for the last question, because I think that this applies here as well. I think being selfless is a really big part of being a good teammate. And the other thing that I would say, and we're working on this a lot with our team right now, is you are able to have kind of a duality and balance to how you consider yourself in the game. And what I mean by that is you can simultaneously want to beat out the teammate that you're competing for a position with so much and be so genuinely successful or genuinely happy for her when she beats you out, if she beats you out. It's not an either or, it's something where you can hold both of those things inside of you at once. You can want your own success and be focused on getting recruited or focused on your own skill development, and also be really focused on the team success and making sure you put the team first. And you are going to do whatever you have to make sure both of those things happen. That balance, that dual focus, it's definitely possible, but too often we're coached or taught that it has to be one or the other. And it's just not true. And so when you're going to be a really good teammate, it's okay to want things for yourself, but you also, you want to also want the best for your team, and you want the best for your teammates, and be able to put their priorities first. And it's a little bit of compartmentalization. There are times when my job is to focus on me, but then there are times where my job is to focus on the team and what the team needs from me. And that is all that I worry about. And that takes practice. So that's the big thing that I would say is you have to practice that actively as an athlete. As coaches will tell you, there's an occasional athlete that will run across who just gets this. And that's that kid that you're just like, praise the Lord for you because you helped keep me in this job. But most often you have to actually actively practice this as an athlete. And it's okay to have to practice it. It doesn't mean you're less than, it just means you're human and you're normal. And you have to practice. How do I stay engaged with this stuff? How do I really come back to when do I focus on me versus when do I focus on team? Even the people who get it most naturally still have to work at it sometimes too. So, put some effort into that and learning, when does that balance needed? When am I about me? When am I about the team? And really focus on compartmentalizing them.
Cool. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, that was really good. I don't know that I have much to add to that. I think just to piggyback off of Jen, it's having that internal drive, right? To not only be great on the field, but like I said, as a teammate, having that same drive that is going to benefit not only you but benefit the team. And I think one of the common examples that we've been working with our team with, it's you could, like Jen said, you can be selfish and want to be the best for yourself and go hit 15 minutes early off the tee or whatever by yourself and be like, well, I put in my work today, so I did my job. But instead, being a great teammate to me is you're going to grab your friend and be like, hey, or my roommate, and I'll be like, hey, let's go hit not just off the tee, let's go hit front toss together. And it's, again, being able to be that selfless piece that Jen just talked about. To better the family, right? And I think that's one of the best ways to define a team, is that it is a family, and you're going to go through your ups and through your downs, but at the end of the day, the family's going to love each other, and really taking advantage of the time that you have in your 4 years to build those relationships with one another. Because again, outside the field, the more that you are bonded outside the field, the better you're going to play on the field. And not that you're going to be best friends with everybody on your team. That's not going to happen. But do you have enough of a relationship with them to be able to call them out when they missed a rep, or, be like, hey, I know you can do better. And I think especially for females, sometimes it's easy for us to take that really personally. But if I have that relationship with Jen on the outside of the field, she knows like, oh, Jo's just got me, right? Like she's just trying to hold me accountable. And I think, again, just a teammates, again, that's not just on the field, like off the field, like you want to be able to, it's kind of the legacy you're investing in the program itself, because at the end of the day, we're going to all leave after, you know, however long you have playing, you know, 4 years, hopefully for everybody. But when you leave, like, do you have those relationships with your teammates after? Because it's about life after too, not just life during. And if you're not being a good teammate, man, you're going to walk away and be like, man, I don't have any really friends from college. And I think that's the beauty of, you know, playing athletics too, is that, you know, you have these friends for life and get to see them walk out life, not just the 4 years on the field.
That's cool.
That's such a good point. And this is why I was really psyched to hear Jo talk about the building relationships piece from the beginning. And that's been a common thread that she's had throughout this that I really, really agree with. And that's exactly what she's talking about there. It reminded me of one of my leadership council, like our version of captains this year, basically. She was on the leadership council last year too. As a sophomore, she was elected very young and kind of, you know, was a little all over the place her sophomore year, as you'd expect. This year she came in as a junior and she said, what I want to do and what I think we need to do as leadership council is make sure that we're being clear that we're going to form relationships with them as teammates first, not as leaders. We're going to form relationships with them as teammates and be really upfront about that. But then also make it really clear that we are your friends and we are your teammates. We are also your leaders. So we are going to hold you accountable and we need you to respect what you're asking you to do because we have that layer, but we are going to get to know you as people, as teammates first, because that is our priority. And I thought it was really exciting to hear her say that because it showed so much growth in her and it was exactly what the team needed. And, you know, of course they had to make sure to say, like, this doesn't mean that we're just going to be your friend. So you can tell us that you like broke team expectations and we're not going to tell coach because we love you. It's not how this works. Like, you know, and what they asked for was they asked for that respect back from their teammates. And I know for so many athletes, being a peer leader is so hard because you're putting so much trust in your teammates to have your back when you hold them accountable. And what I mean by that is, if you're a leader and you go after your teammates to hold them accountable for something they need to do, a missed rep or not sprinting as hard as they should or whatever, and they turn that back on you and say, how could you do this to me? That's a breach of trust, you know, that teammate is giving back to you. And that's so hard as a leader. And so what they asked for is saying, here's the risks that we're taking. Like, here's the trust that we're placing in you, and we need you to trust us too, so that we can try to go somewhere together. And the foundation of that, as she brought up, was you have to form relationships with them as teammates first and as people first. And we're, you know, obviously in the middle of it, and it's been a weird year because a lot of the team's been off campus because of COVID, but it certainly is working better than it was before for her, which is great.
That's cool. Really cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Ton of great content being shared tonight. I want to go back to that time management piece as part of the collegiate experience. Are there any specific tools or ways that your program teaches and encourages strong time management skills, since it's so important?
We focus a little bit more on yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested to hear what Jo has to say about this because we do some of this. But in the Ivy League, like a lot of what I kind of say with this is you have to be self-motivated, period. Like you have to be self-motivated to be on our team. You know, you're not going to come and be a Division I student athlete at an Ivy League school unless you really love the sport. We don't give out athletic scholarships, and you have to really want to be here. My job is not to talk you into this. So, you know, it's just not something that I'm interested in doing. So if you can't figure out how to manage softball time to meet expectations for extra reps, for practice, for whatever, like I'll talk to you about if you want to like bounce stuff off of me about how to do that, but I'm not going to convince you to do it. And so a lot of it is about self-motivation. When we're talking about time management, if you want to come and bounce that off of me, sure, I'm happy to talk it through with you and talk about options, no problem. But I'm not going to hand you the how-to with that. It's your life and you got to figure this out. I will provide support for you, but you need to do this. And that's just not to say we just like leave them out there and see whether they sink or swim. We have plenty of resources that are available to them. We have sports psych on staff. We have academic advisors just for athletes on staff. We have leadership advisors on staff. You know, we have a whole athlete support system just for our athletes at Dartmouth. So we direct them to those people. And we do some stuff about like stress management and things like that during our team meetings. But generally speaking, the time management piece, you have to figure out, again, what matters to you, and you have to be self-motivated. And if you're struggling with that, ask for help. That's the big thing we really try to make sure is put into their brains. Like, ask us for help, that's okay, but we're not going to do it for you. We're going to be more of a sounding board rather than a hand holder through this.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think you have all the resources. We give you all the tools. I mean, Jen talked about it, tutoring, you know, academic advisors. We're here for you. I mean, there's so many, you know, resources that you have to be successful, and we will help you, guide you in that way. I honestly feel like the biggest piece that this generation is facing within the time management is being able to put your phone down. And I'm just being completely honest, it's a huge outside distraction. And I think it's, you have enough discipline to be able to put it down and get your work done, or go out and do an activity or whatever it may be, and be fully present in it. I know before pre-COVID and everything we were doing, we would have our athletes all walk in down one of our hallways, and they would they put their phone on their charger before they walk down into the locker room. And it was kind of a win-win for everybody, because your phone gets charged, it's up there, and you don't have to think about it, and there's no distractions. But I'd say that's one of the biggest battles is, do you have enough discipline to put your phone down and, you know, be focused in the present, and really be focused on what you're doing.
It's cool. Yeah, I have a hard time putting my phone down.
Yeah, I feel like we all can relate to that one.
Yeah,
We all
yeah,
do.
yeah.
100%.
Yeah, my wife gets on me on that one for sure. From your perspective as a coach, what exemplifies leadership for an athlete, both on and off the field? What do you guys see that exemplifies leadership in an athlete? We'll start with. Do we start with Jen? Did you start the last one?
I cut the line. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries. If you want to start it, go ahead. If not, then Jo can start.
Do you want me to start again, or you want
Sure.
Joe to start?
Yeah, that's totally cool.
Okay. So I guess I wanted to ask for a bit of clarification. What exemplifies leadership, like us leading an athlete, or what exemplifies a peer leader, a team leader?
What you just said. Yeah, student leader.
Okay. So I think actually I kind of already answered this one, so I won't go on it. You know, learning from your mistakes, being and Jo said this earlier, being kind of learner mode. You know, you want to learn from what's happening to you rather than casting judgments either on yourself or other people. It's really easy as a leader when you're criticized by teammates. And this sophomore leader I was telling you about, she was criticized by her teammates a lot for what happened her sophomore year. And she could have gotten defensive, and she could have denied it. She could have been, one thing that the coach that I work with a lot says, triple D, defend, deny, destroy when you're attacked, you know, and that's something that you have to be really careful about as a leader, that you don't react with that kind of triple D response. And she didn't do that. She really processed it and took time with it and talked to me about it, worked with me through the summer, and came back and said, it's about building relationships, and here's how I want to do that. And so it comes back to what Jo said at the beginning, out of that the 10 strengths of a game changer athlete, building relationships, especially as a peer leader, that is so huge, because it builds that trust, and it builds that, ability to be accountable the way that Jo was talking about. So that's huge. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of that as well. I think in that 10 things, it's being able to do the right thing, even when it's not the popular thing to do. And sometimes you're gonna take flack for it, and like Jen's saying, and it's being okay with it and knowing that it's still the right thing and it's what I believe is right and who I want to be. And then within that as well, again, continuing to build those relationships, to be able to lead those people within it. And sometimes they're going to follow, and sometimes they're not going to, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that. And then I think in the peer leadership as well, again, back to that learner mode, there's going to be times when I have to be a learner, and I'm not going to just be the leader, and there's somebody else that's going to lead me in it. and just being able to accept that. Just because I'm a captain, or maybe I don't even have a title, it doesn't mean that I'm stuck in it. I'm the only leader on the team, right? It's being able to learn from your other peers, but as well as, again, the mentors that are in your life, your coaches or whoever else, and being able to digest what they give you and then again give it away. I think that's one of the biggest things, and you can see that within student athletes who are hungry to not only give but to get as well, and use it to be able to give back.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Again, just solid content. Really appreciate it. I want to make sure we're practicing good time management skills ourselves. So, again, so much good stuff that we're here a few minutes past. Jake, go ahead and move along to that question about 2020 and the unique situation that we're in, because I really think we covered the discussion about college scholarships for both the athlete and the parent.
Sounds good. Yeah. So obviously we've seen COVID-19 situation pose a unique challenge this year. Share with us some observations on how your athletes have dealt with it and overcome these challenges. So there's a two-part question. So that question there, how they've overcome it and dealt with it, and then what advice would you give to these athletes and coaches to better themselves during this difficult time? And we'll start with Jo on that one.
Yeah, I think it's been a unique challenge for everybody, not just student athletes, but for coaches and for everyone within the world. So I think within that, there's almost like a comfort knowing that everybody else is going through the same struggle that you're going through. I would say some of the ways that they've coped with it is just, again, having each other. I think that's been one of the biggest things. And I think honestly for our team and a lot of student athletes that I know and talk to, it's brought back a lot. It's almost like that terrible injury that's season injury or career-ending injury or graduation that we talk about all the time. It's like at one point in time, this game is going to end, and you're going to wish that you would have enjoyed it a little bit more. And so I feel like it's almost brought back a little bit of fire within them to really take advantage of every single day that they have the gift to play this game, because it is just that. It is a gift, and we never know when our time is going to end. And everybody got cut short last year, and I think it just left a little bitter taste in their mouths. And so I think part of that coping has just been like, well, what am I doing in the present to get me to where I want to be? And I know something that I've been really telling my athletes is like, it's so easy for all of us to be like, well, one day we're going to get back on the field. One day, we're going to, play a game one day. But really, like, we should flip it and be like, it's day one. So what are we doing every single day to get us to that one day? And I guess that kind of flows into the next question. It's like we all have opportunities as coaches and as people and as athletes to better ourselves every single day. And perhaps more than ever, there's more resources available online or whatever it may be, connecting us to really grow as people. And again, it's just that investment piece and being committed to dealing with it every day and seeing it as an opportunity and not so much as a challenge. Like, yes, there's going to be challenges within the opportunity, but I mean, every day is a chance to act on it instead of just live within it, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
I love that. Some of the challenges, during the fall, we were kind of in 3 different groups. We had the group that was on campus that we could work with. There were 6 athletes, and we had partial enrollment at Dartmouth. We had a group that were living in the area, but we weren't allowed to work with them. They just chose to come up and live and train in the area, but they weren't allowed to use facilities on campus or anything like that. And then we had about half the team that was all off campus at their homes. So it was really interesting trying to manage all 3 of those groups. And it might be, so the big thing that I would say about that is I tried to make sure that the main thing that you as a coach can do for your athletes during this time is you need to make sure that you're always providing clarity. And even if that's clarity about what you don't know, and it's not just right now, but it's during times of chaos in general, one of the primary things that you can provide is clarity, even if it's just clarity about all the crap you don't know, which during the beginning of COVID especially, I felt like that's all I was doing. But your athletes need clarity from you, even if it's just, I don't know the answer to this, here's when I think I might know, or I don't know the answer to this and I might never know the answer to this, but here's what we're going to do to try to manage that. They need that clarity from you. So for a coach, that's a big thing that I've been working on and pushing my staff to work on as well. For the team, I think a part of it was also seeking their feedback and giving them space. This comes back to some of what I said a little bit earlier. We have this thing called accountability groups where whenever we're separated, whether usually it's for summer or for holiday break, they have accountability groups where they send each other pictures or call or whatever when they're having workouts, and it's voluntary and things like that, but they're able to do that as part of their self-motivation with their teammates, and typically it's something that the team really all decides to do. But this year, during the late summer and into fall, they asked me if we could change that. They said, I think we need to change accountability groups, coach, and it needs to be more about motivation, understanding our own self-motivation, and talking about what's going to motivate us to get our work done this week, because they're all doing their workouts. It's not about making sure the workouts get done, and that's progress. Because when I first came on here at Dartmouth, like the accountability groups are more about making sure the workouts got done, and I just was like, your teammates shouldn't be making you do that. You have to do that yourself. Like, let's again meet that baseline. So now it's more about how do we help motivate each other or understand our own motivation with each other's help. That is a little more productive. And so when they asked to transition to that, I saw that as a huge moment of growth, actually. And so they asked to change that. So really being open to feedback. How do they want to shift things? That was something that was huge for us. And I think the main thing that I would say, advice that I would give is, and coach talked a little bit about this, you have to get out of why me mode as an athlete and even as a coach with all of this. The minute that you get stuck in the why me mode, you're not going to be able to be very productive. That's not to say that you shouldn't take time to feel frustrated or to mourn a lost season or, or a lost experience. It's okay and necessary to experience those emotions and to talk about them too, but you can't get stuck in why is this happening to me or this is so unfair. You have to move past that and to just say, what can I learn from this? How can I move through it? How is my program going to grow because of this? And that can be really hard sometimes, but the minute you get stuck, you and your program, you and your teammates, if you're an athlete, you're sunk. So really trying to fight through that. And understand that we have an opportunity here to build resilience in a way that you'll probably never have as a coach or athlete again. Hopefully you don't have something that does anything like this to you again, where you have an opportunity to turn this into a way to understand your own coping mechanisms, your own ability to be a resilient person and a resilient athlete. And you get a chance to actively work on that because we're in the middle of a really tough time. So embrace that chance to work on it, make that decision. That's easier said than done. But again, like the more you practice making that decision every day, the easier it gets.
Yeah, that's cool. Nolan, I think they kind of answered the last question. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think they've answered it in so many ways. What does it take to be an elite athlete? But to close it out, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience in that regard of what you see separates the elite athletes that you've coached? What is maybe one of the distinguishing things that you see separates that top tier from the rest?
Jo, do you want to go?
Sure. I would say just a piggyback. I've kind of already said it, but A, their love of the game, and then B, their discipline, and being able to combine those two into one. And I mean, we've seen some incredible athletes, within the time in sports, and I think those are two of the things that they talk about. It's like mastering their craft, and not just mastering to say they did it, but they master it because they love it and they love to do it and they love to do it well. And I think what separates the elite athletes is that they're able to separate their feelings from the fact of what they need to do. I think it's easy to be like, oh, I'm tired today, so I'm just going to only go and, hit a few balls, instead of like, okay, no, fact is, I know that once I show up and I do it, and I'm going to feel better once I just get it, like when I go and do it, and not just act based on my feelings. Because you're not always going to feel good. And I think that's one of the greatest things about, being an athlete. It's like, am I able to have that mentality to separate my feelings and show up because I know for a fact that this is going to help better me to be who I want to be. And I think that's a huge part of an elite athlete. You know who you want to be, and it's like, how am I going to go and do it? And I guess that goes back to who are you, and who do you, again, who are you and who do you want to be, and what are your actions that you're taking to do that?
Yeah, my answer is similar. I'm gonna quote Hutch on this. Carol Hutchins at Michigan. She had a response in a clip I saw where she talked about Sierra Romero and how one of the things that set her apart as a great player, and a lot of the great players that she coached or observed, was that she always was hungry for more, but at the same time, so she was never satisfied, but her confidence and knowledge of who she was really sound. And that's again, that balance, that duality piece. You can never be satisfied and always expect more from yourself, while also being really confident in who you are and really know who you are and be happy with that too. Like, those aren't either or things. And so often as an athlete, it's good to be hungry. It's good to expect and want more from yourself, but you also need to work on understanding who you are and finding finding a real solid sense of self and being good with who you are. And as a coach, that's really key too, because you have to model the way for that with your athletes. And so she said that, some of the best athletes she'd ever coached, they were always hungry for more. They were never satisfied, but their confidence, their sense of self was not impacted by day-to-day performance. It was not impacted by day-to-day things. It was too deep for that. So if Sierra Romero goes up and has a bad day or even a bad week, she doesn't start thinking I'm a terrible hitter. She just says, I'm having a bad week, and it takes real sense of self and knowledge of self to be able to do that. And that comes back to some of the things we've talked about, forming relationships with people that you can trust, things that, relationships that really help you figure out what matters to you, and then know yourself, so I think that it comes back to those two things.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That concludes it. That's it. That's a lot of content in an hour and 15 minutes. So thank you for taking the time. I know we went over our hour time limit, but I don't know about you, Nolan. I really enjoyed it.
I took a lot of notes too. Thank you so much for your time, your
insights. Took a ton of notes. Yeah. Jen and Joe, thank you so much for being a part of our episode 3. We hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and stay safe. And I hope your athletes are healthy. And hopefully one day we'll have you guys back on again.
Thank you. It was great to be on.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.